The house on Areti Street hadn't changed. Cracked walls, rusted gate, and the same faint smell of old kerosene and dried pepper. Ifedayo Oshodi stepped through the gate with dust on her shoes and tension in her chest. She was home, but not by choice. Inside, Chief Landra Oshodi paced like a trapped lion. His white-haired barda fluttered behind him, but nothing could hide the panic in his eyes. "They are threatening to seize the land in Ibadan," he muttered. "And the contract in Abuja is frozen. Ife, we need a solution." Ife dropped her overnight bag, eyes narrowing. What kind of solution? Chief Oshodi didn't meet her gaze. Madame Stella, her stepmother, sat stiffly on the edge of the couch, twisting her lace wrapper with irritation. "The Obasa family has offered help," she said, voice clipped, "on one condition." Ife's heart skipped. She knew that name, Obinna Obasa, tech mogul, wealthy, cold. You'll marry their son. Quietly, a traditional ceremony. No questions asked, her father said. Ife's voice trembled. "Is this about business or something worse?" Silence. Tenny, her cousin, stormed in from the corridor. "You want her to fix what you broke? To trade her life for your mess?" But Ife already knew. This wasn't a proposal. It was penance. Her father's sins now had her name stitched into them. That night, she packed her anchor dresses with trembling hands. Somewhere between duty and betrayal, she'd made her choice. The Obasa mansion rose like a glass fortress at the end of a private drive in Ikoyi, tall, quiet, and deliberately empty of warmth. Ife stepped out of the black Prado SUV, her anchor wrapped swaying in the sea breeze. She clutched her weekend bag tighter, resisting the urge to turn around. Obinna Obasa stood in the doorway like a shadow, clad in a dark kaftan, his expression unreadable, as if she were just another piece of paperwork arriving late. "No need for ceremony," he said. "There's a guest room prepared." So this was marriage. Inside, the air was cool, the floors marble, and the furniture sleek, expensive, and lifeless. A lone sculpture of a faceless woman sat in the hallway. Ife felt seen and unseen at once. Madame Obasa, Obi's mother, never came out to greet her, but the staff watched. Silently, curiously. The new bride from Surulere had arrived like a whispered scandal. Dinner was stiff. Obi barely spoke. Ife picked at grilled fish while staring at the empty seat between them. "I know what this is," she finally said, voice low. "A cover-up. A performance." Obi met her eyes. "You don't know half of it." He stood and left, footsteps echoing down the polished hall. Later that night, Ife lay alone in the guest room, surrounded by white sheets and silence. The lights were too bright. The space, too big. In Surulere, shame had weight. In Ikoyi, it echoed. She whispered to the ceiling, "If this is the price of loyalty, I hope it doesn't kill me." And from the hallway, behind the door, Obi paused, just long enough to hear it. Days passed in silence. Ife drifted through the Obasa mansion like a misplaced shadow, greeting the housekeepers with soft nods, memorizing the rhythm of a home that didn't want her. Obi left early, returned late, and never entered her room. At night, the only sound was the slow hum of the AC and the ache of unspoken things. On the fifth morning, she wandered into the library, rows of untouched books, a baby grand piano, and dustless shelves that smelled like money, not memory. Obi sat there, sleeves rolled, typing quietly on his MacBook. "You play?" she asked, motioning to the piano. He didn't look up. "I used to, before everything became transactions." Ife raised a brow. "So, what are we then? A contract clause?" He finally met her gaze, his eyes sharp, tired. "You're collateral, just like I was." Before she could answer, Madame Stella's call lit up her phone. She declined. Ife had already left one cage behind. She didn't need to be summoned from another. Later that evening, Tenny video called from Yaba, face covered in foundation streaks and laughter. "You still breathing in that cold palace?" Barely, Ife smiled, weakly, his quiet, broken, maybe. "Men like him break others first," Tenny warned. "Don't forget why you're there." But Ife couldn't. Not with the memory of her father's trembling voice. Not with Obi's sadness sitting between his words. One night, Thunder cracked across Ikoyi. Ife stood by her window, rain streaking the glass like a cry withheld. She caught a glimpse of Obi in the hallway, staring at a photo of his late sister. A name hung in the air, Ijeoma. The house wasn't just cold, it was haunted. The photo haunted her, framed in silver, tucked near the staircase. A girl no older than 20, eyes bright, smile gentle. Ijeoma Obasa. Ife saw it each morning and felt the weight of a name no one spoke aloud. That evening, she found Uncle Sei, the driver, wiping down the SUV in the garage. He was quiet, loyal, but he'd been with the Obasa family long enough to know everything. She was his sister, right? Ife asked softly. Sei paused, water dripping from the sponge in his hand. Yes, Ijeoma was light. She loved Fuji music, always teasing Obi. Then Chief Oshodi ruined her. Ife's stomach twisted. My father. Sei nodded. Chief Lanra ran a fund meant for the Obasa Foundation. Promised support for Ijeoma School, but used the money elsewhere. When the scandal broke, she was humiliated. Dropped out. Died in a car crash a month later. Ife's knees buckled slightly. So that's why this marriage exists. To bury it. Sei didn't reply. He didn't have to. Later, Ife confronted her father over the phone. Her voice trembled. You said it was business, but you killed her future. On the other end, Chief Oshodi's voice was sharp. That deal kept you alive. Ifedayo, show some gratitude. She ended the call with her fingers shaking. When she returned upstairs, Obi stood at the hallway window, watching the city light shimmer through the rain. You knew? She asked. He turned slowly. Of course. That's why I didn't want this, you. Her breath caught, but she nodded. I didn't choose this either, but I won't wear your grief like a hand-me-down. Obi stared at her, not with anger, but a kind of fragile respect. For the first time, silence didn't feel like a wall between them. It felt like recognition. Breakfast at the mansion was quiet, as usual, but that morning, Ife didn't reach for the pap or greet the steward. She wore a plain white boo-boo, her eyes steady. Across from her, Obi watched, waiting. I'm leaving, she said simply. Obi's fork paused midair. To where? Anywhere that isn't built on silence, she replied. I won't keep your secrets of my father's anymore. Madame Obasa entered just then, wrapped in gold lace and suspicion. What foolishness is this? She snapped. You think you can walk away from the Obasa name. I never wore it with pride, Ife said, rising. This marriage was a lie, and I'm done pretending. By afternoon, Ife was gone, one travel bag, a wallet, and enough fire in her chest to burn every illusion behind her. She knocked on a red-gated flat in age. Auntie Ronk opened it, eyes wide with shock and welcome. My daughter, what happened? I finally opened my eyes. Inside, the small living room smelled of beans and fried plantain. Familiar, real. That night, as she lay on a thin mattress, Ife let tears run freely. Not of regret, but release. Meanwhile, in Ikoyi, Obi sat alone in the garden, the first rain of the season washing over the stone tiles. He read the note Ife left behind. You're not your pain, Obi, and I'm not my father's debt. Maybe one day we'll meet as whole people. Until then, heal. The flat in age was nothing like Ikoyi, but Ife slept deeper than she had in weeks. Roosters crowed. Kerosene smoke drifted from nearby stoves. And in Auntie Ronk's kitchen, the scent of ogi and akara filled the air like comfort. If you stay long enough, her aunt said, flipping akara bowls in oil, this place will remind you who you were before the silence. Ife smiled faintly. Each morning, she helped in the shop, selling books, helping young girls learn to read street signs and write their names. Her heart began to unclench. One afternoon, Tenny arrived with bright lipstick and a loud wrapper. You're really glowing, babe. Freedom looks hot on you. I feel lighter, Ife replied, sorting textbooks. Like I finally own my story. They laughed, then paused as a generator rumbled outside. The piece was fragile, but it was hers. Back in Ikoyi, Obi sat in his home office, fingers hovering over a keyboard. The walls felt emptier without her footsteps. He hadn't called, not once. but her voice echoed in his memory. "You're not your pain." He stared at the contract folder on his desk, the one that had started it all. His father's legacy, Chief Oshodi's betrayal, and Ijioma's ghost. And then he did something he hadn't done in years. He closed the laptop and left the house. Ify was at the community library, helping the girl spell her name when she heard a car pull up. She turned, marker still in hand. There he stood, in a simple shirt. No pretense, no entourage. "Why are you here?" she asked. "I needed to see you outside the shadows." Ify stood in the doorway of the community library, arms folded, chalk dust clinging to her skate. Behind her, the soft hum of children reciting letters. In front of her, Obi, no security, no shoot, no practice distance. He looked older in the daylight. "Softer, too. You said you didn't want this," she reminded him, voice firm but calm. "I didn't," he replied. "But I didn't know you. I only saw the stain of your father's name. Now I see you." She hesitated. "And what do you want now?" Obi reached into his back pocket and pulled out a folded sheet. A check, large enough to run the library for years. "I don't want you to come back to Ikoyi," he said. "I want you to grow this, build what you were meant to." Ify stared at the check, then at him. "What's the catch?" "No catch," he replied. "This isn't about guilt or legacy. It's just choice." A pause. Then he added, softer, "But if you ever want to see what love looks like outside of obligation, I'll be here." And just like that, he left. No dramatic declarations. Just a quiet exit, leaving the check and a thundering heart behind. Later that night, Ify sat on the rooftop of the flat in age, eyes on the stars. Tenny joined her with Puff-Puff in a paper napkin. "You still love him," Tenny teased. "If I do," Ify said, smiling faintly. "I want to love him with my eyes open, not as payment, but as a person." She placed the check in a drawer, not as a rescue, but as a resource. And for the first time in months, she let herself hope. 1 year later, the library and age buzzed with life. The worn walls had been painted sky blue. Handwritten alphabet charts lined the windows, and the scent of chin-chin and disinfectant filled the air. Outside, children played under a mango tree with laughter that felt like renewal. Ify stood at the front of the room, holding a book titled "The Fire Doesn't Own You." Her voice carried calm power. "You are not your past. You are your possibility." The applause from the women's literacy group was warm. Real. Her white boo-boo fluttered as she stepped into the courtyard, heart steady. Obi waited there. He stood by a wooden bench under the shade, holding a wrapped gift and a quiet smile. No cars, no noise, just him. "You came," she said, amused. "I told you I would," he replied. No secrets this time. She opened the gift. Inside was a framed sketch of her teaching, charcoal on cream paper. Below it, handwritten, "From the ashes, you built truth." They sat quietly on the bench, shoulder to shoulder. The heat was soft, the air full of newness. "So, what now?" she asked. He turned to her, eyes steady. "Now, we begin, without debt, without legacy, just two people writing our own story." Ify looked toward the children playing, then at the building she'd rebuilt, then at him. She smiled, not because she had to, but because she could.